Welcome to the Productive Life podcast hosted by me, Megan Mins. This is the podcast for entrepreneurs who want to be more productive in their business and their personal life. Because as a business owner, your business and personal life are connected, and we can't talk about one without talking about the other. Each week, you'll learn about productivity, organization, personal development, self-care, business strategies, and more. And now, let's get started. Welcome to the Productive Life podcast. I'm Megan, and I'm so excited for this very special episode of the podcast. If you've been a longtime listener, you have heard me share a lot of personal updates over the years, and a lot of hard updates around miscarriages that we've had in the past. And this update is a happier update. We are actually pregnant. At the time of recording this, I am 14 weeks pregnant, so I'm officially in the second trimester. And by the time you're listening to this on the podcast, I think I'll be 16 weeks. So hopefully everything's still going smooth then. But I really wanted to record this because I like to share about not only what's going on in our personal life, but how it affects the business, things I'm learning, as well as just sharing my journey. One thing I really experienced when I had my very first miscarriage back at the beginning of 2019 was that I just felt really alone, and I felt like no one was talking about this. So my hope is that by sharing a little bit of my story and my journey, that you can feel less alone if you're going through something similar, or if you just really want to know more about my personal life, then hopefully this will be interesting to you. So if you have personally gone through miscarriages or any fertility issues, or feel triggered hearing about people's pregnancies or their history of miscarriage, I just want you to know I totally understand, love you, sending you so much support. I've been there. I'm going to go into detail about these things on this episode. So if this is going to be a really hard episode for you to listen to, I respect that. And I'm completely okay if you need to jump off and maybe come back and listen to this when you're ready. So in order to talk about this pregnancy, I really feel like I need to give a little bit of history and recap how we got to this point, because this pregnancy was very spontaneous and out of the blue. So we had actually had our very first miscarriage at 8 weeks in January of 2019. I have a whole podcast episode that I recorded about that experience more specifically. So if you haven't listened to that and you're curious to hear more, be sure to go check out that episode. Once this is on the podcast and on YouTube, we'll make sure to link to that in the description. But it's just a personal update I shared in 2019. So after that happened at the very beginning of 2019, we took a break from trying and I wanted to focus on business and enjoying life. And it wasn't until the very end of 2019 that we actually decided to start doing some fertility treatments. My sister, Natalie Crawford, is a fertility doctor here in Texas. I'm so grateful for her support and resources throughout our journey. And so we did decide to start doing some fertility treatments at the end of 2019. We started with hormonal medication and then actually did do 2 IUIs. So I'll go into a little bit of detail about that because I don't think I kept everyone on the podcast updated about that part of our journey. But we actually did get pregnant just from the hormonal medication. So at the very beginning of 2020, we had a pregnancy, but we had a very early miscarriage at that time. So this is our second miscarriage. We miscarried at about, I think it was like the 4 to 5 week mark, which technically classifies it as like a biochemical pregnancy or biochemical miscarriage. But basically it's just a super, super early. Many people would not have even known they were pregnant at that point. We did because of the fertility treatments and all the extra tracking we were doing. So that happened. And then we immediately shifted into doing 2 different IUIs. And we did get pregnant from the second one. But again, we had another early miscarriage. This was at the very beginning of March of 2020. And this one was around like that 3 to 4 week mark. Again, super early, but our third miscarriage, and super frustrating and discouraging. I know so many people go through fertility journeys that are very different, and everyone's story is very different. I was so grateful we were getting pregnant, but it was so frustrating to not sustain a pregnancy because it really felt like it was my fault. Like it was, everything was working and then it just couldn't stay. And so that was really, really difficult emotionally. That season of, December 2019 through March 2020, when we were doing all these fertility treatments, was also very challenging for me as a business owner. I was feeling all the emotional mood swings that hormones give you when you're, doing so much hormonal work. It was really, really difficult. It was a really hard season of life, a hard season of business. I went really quiet around that season. The podcast kind of stopped. I really stopped showing up because I was just not feeling well. And by the time we had that third miscarriage at the beginning of March, I was just kind of over it. I was about to turn 30 in March. This was right before COVID and quarantine really started to become serious here in Texas. So rodeo season was coming up at that time, and that's a huge fun party season here in Houston. And I was turning 30 on St. Patrick's Day. So just kind of decided to take a break from fertility treatments and from trying to get pregnant, tracking, and just doing all the stuff that comes into play with trying to get pregnant. So I said, let's just take a break and at least enjoy March, enjoy this season, and take it kind of month by month from there. Both my doctor and my sister were kind of saying that if we did decide to continue fertility treatments after that, they would probably recommend IVF, which just felt like this very serious next level that I really wanted to think about. So in March, we took a break and ended up continuing that break, especially with everything that happened with COVID and quarantine, and of course is still happening. We just decided to continue that break. So spring and summer was just a combination of enjoying life, focusing on business, dealing with quarantine, all that stuff. And Johnny, my husband, and I really ended up getting to a point where we were totally happy, not trying to have kids anytime soon. We just loved our life, very happy with where things were, and kind of just tabled it as a thing we would think about later. So at that time, I also had stopped doing all of the things you're supposed to do when you're trying to get pregnant. So I was eating fast food. I was drinking tons of caffeine, like venti cold brew from Starbucks in the morning. I was being healthy and active, but I really wasn't taking care of myself to the level I had been while we were trying to get pregnant. And I totally stopped tracking everything as well. So 0% trying. And it wasn't, and it was so we had stopped trying completely. And that's when things took a very surprising turn. I had actually spent a day with my girlfriends in June where we had drinking champagne during the day. I had been eating like soft cheese and meats, got a massage, and just had like a little girl day, and woke up the next morning very hungover and realized I was late. So I took a pregnancy test fully expecting it to be negative and was startled that it was positive. If you've ever tried getting pregnant before and you're used to seeing really, really faint positive pregnancy tests like I was, this was a very strong positive, and it just shocked me. And it was a very strange experience because this was also my first positive pregnancy test where I wasn't like elated to get it because I just wasn't expecting it. It was so surprising, so out of the blue, and really changed the course of the rest of the year for very obvious reasons. So it was very startling. And I also knew emotionally, mentally, okay, getting this positive means we might have to go down this line again and maybe have a fourth miscarriage and have to go through all of this again. And I just like stopped doing fertility treatments because I wasn't ready to go through that again. So it was a really weird, bizarre experience to even get that positive pregnancy test. So that is this pregnancy. So it's our fourth pregnancy, and it started out on this really weird, bizarre note. And I just want to acknowledge that I actually hated hearing stories like this when I was trying to get pregnant. So when we were doing fertility treatments, I felt like everyone and their mom was telling us about how they or someone they knew got pregnant as soon as they stopped fertility treatments. As soon as they stopped trying, they had this effortless pregnancy. I hated being told that. It was not comforting. It was not reassuring. It didn't make me feel good. And so then for that to be our story and what happened to us was very strange. I still have really weird unresolved feelings about that being our story. Of course, I'm grateful to have had that be our story, but it's super weird. And I'm still dealing with like the emotional and mindset components of that. And of course, we're just now at the second trimester, so anything could still happen. But I think that's been a really weird thing is I acknowledge that what I felt like was a relatable story of struggling to get pregnant is now suddenly like a really hard story to tell and a hard story to hear for others who were in the same boat as me. So that's just been so bizarre. Definitely something I'm still working through. So we got that positive pregnancy test. And since we hadn't used any medication or fertility treatments to get pregnant, the entire pregnancy itself has been very different than my past 2 pregnancies where we were using fertility treatments. I was so used to going in to get blood work right away, every couple of days, and tracking and seeing low numbers and bad numbers and getting bad news, that this whole journey has been very, very different. And I'm really grateful for it, but it's been so bizarre. So instead of jumping right in to go see an OB-GYN as soon as we got that positive, we ended up waiting. So I talked to my doctor, actually got a new doctor, which I'll talk about in a second, but we decided to wait until I was about 6.5 weeks along, 6 to 7 weeks along, and just to kind of take it easy for 2 to 3 weeks in between and just be relaxed. I didn't take any progesterone or additional medication to support the pregnancy besides just my prenatal. We didn't do any blood level testing. So it was kind of a strange little waiting period that I'd never experienced before. And we did tell family and friends immediately, our immediate family and our friends at least. I learned that the hard way from our first pregnancy. I'll talk about that and why we told people in a few minutes, but very glad we told people right away. And then we had our 6.5 week appointment. I was so anxious the whole day, felt nauseous and sick to my stomach, and just fully expected to get bad news. And instead, we saw the heartbeat and everything measured perfectly and confirmed the due date. And the sense of relief was huge. Thankfully, Johnny got to come into the office for that appointment. He hasn't been able to come to any of the others, but he was able to come in for that, which was so amazing to have his support there. But even after that, I had not felt excited about this pregnancy yet. I was just anxious. I was trying to be very relaxed, but about the pregnancy overall, I was just very uncertain. I was very hesitant. I wasn't like excited. And everyone we told was like, "Are you so excited? This is so amazing." And it felt strange, but I wasn't quite excited yet. I think because of our miscarriages, I was really protecting myself. I had my guard up. I was trying to do everything I could to not become attached or emotionally attached to what was happening. I adamantly refused to plan about this. Like I wouldn't talk to anyone about names or the future or what this meant for Christmas or what this meant for the business. It just didn't feel ready. It felt really hard. So it was just putting a wall up and just being very unattached as much as possible. Then we had an appointment 2 weeks later. Again, I was very anxious that day. And again, everything went great. But I didn't feel that much better after that appointment either, because this was right around when we lost our very first pregnancy. So I was like a little bit comforted, but also still anxious. And it really wasn't until we had our 10.5 week appointment that I felt an actual sense of relief at seeing the heartbeat, having great measuring stats for the baby, and seeing the baby like move around inside of me was so crazy. And I really think that felt like a turning point for me. We also did genetic testing at that appointment. So we were able to find out the sex of the baby, which I guess I haven't shared yet. It's a girl. We're having a girl. I've shared it on social media, but I hadn't shared on this episode yet. So we did genetic testing, found out we're having a girl, and all the tests came back clear. So I really think that 10.5, 11.5 week mark was where, for me, I finally started to be able to shift during this pregnancy out of having my guard up and being so reserved and hesitant, and instead kind of starting to make the slow shift into feeling excited and feeling like I can prepare for this and plan around it. Of course, you never know what can happen. We can't control what will happen. But it really wasn't until the end of the first trimester that shift started happening for me. And I know everyone's journey is different. You know, if you've experienced miscarriage or loss before, what your first trimester feels like mentally and emotionally might be very different than mine. But it really took the whole first trimester for me to be able to make that kind of shift. And even now, it's definitely still a slow shift, but it's a nice one to be experiencing. We've never experienced that before. And also that 6.5-week appointment when we saw the heartbeat for the first time was my first time having an ultrasound with a heartbeat. Despite having 3 pregnancies, we had never seen the heartbeat before. So I think that appointment was super emotional. So as far as the mindset goes, I kind of touched on this a little bit. I had a lot of hard time wrapping my head around this being our story. I still do. Even when I'm talking about it here, when I talk about it on Instagram, I'm so sensitive to those who have gone through what we've gone through or who are still going through it. And I find it uncomfortable to talk about, not because I want to keep it private. I love being an open book, but because I'm just worried about the pain that it will cause to other people and how it can trigger other people. So I think that's been a hard thing to juggle with this. And then even when I tell my friends about us being pregnant, and how this wasn't a surprise and we weren't trying, they all haven't gone through loss. And even though they were so supportive of me through this whole journey, their first reaction is to be like, oh, wow, that's amazing. Isn't it meant to be? Like, I knew so-and-so also had that. So I don't know. There's been a lot of weird, complicated mindset experiences for me around having a pregnancy after miscarriage. But now that we're in the second trimester, I finally feel like we can start being excited. We can start planning maternity leave, thinking about the registry, thinking about the nursery, brainstorming names. So it's been a really nice shift the past couple of weeks, but it's been very bizarre, to say the least. I think the most common words I use to describe this pregnancy have been bizarre and surreal. Which hopefully you guys are cool with me being this honest, because that's just how I am. So first trimester symptoms, in case you're curious, my most consistent, dominant symptom the entire time has been utter exhaustion. And not just like, I'm tired, like that level of depletion where you have nothing left to give to anyone or anything or yourself. So just utter depletion was the most common symptom. I also hiccup a lot when I'm talking, which you may have noticed in my live streams. I was also very queasy the entire first trimester, like pretty much constantly. It would get way worse in the evening. I didn't ever actually throw up, but food never sounded appealing. And I'd be in the middle of a meal, so a few bites in, and suddenly have to spit out what I was eating because one ingredient just disgusted me out of the blue. Very extreme emotional swings, like laughing and crying and being really upset and unhappy and angry. So all of that within like a very short time period. And then I think the most surprising symptom for me was also how apathetic I was feeling during the first trimester. Like I just really had a hard time caring about, the house or myself or anything. I felt like I've never personally had a history of depression, but I really had moments of depression during the first trimester, and really being unmotivated. I'm typically a very ambitious, motivated person who's very fulfilled by striving towards goals and showing up and working. And I did not feel like myself at all the entire first trimester. I wouldn't say I've even started to feel remotely like myself until yesterday. So, I know it'll all ebb and flow, but I think that was very unexpected. I just didn't expect to feel so unlike myself. And then there were also a few symptoms that I just feel like I had no idea happened in the first trimester that I assumed happened in the third trimester when you had a really big belly and a big baby that you're carrying around. I had shortness of breath all the time. And I think I even did a live stream once where I had to take a really big deep breath. We live in a 3-story house. So going up and down the stairs, I'd be out of breath, like halfway up the stairs. Again, I always assumed that happened later in pregnancy when you have a big baby, but it happens actually really early because your body needs to create like twice as much blood while the baby is really little. And so you need more oxygen to support that. So who knew? Also, the urge to go to the bathroom all the time, I thought was later on when the baby was physically pressing on you, but surprise, it's not. It's a first trimester symptom. Round ligament pain as well, like as your uterus grows, has been very surprising. Dizzy spells, heartburn, all of those things. So definitely a lot of symptoms. And again, I think the biggest one that really affected my life was that exhaustion. So as you can imagine, this affected the business a lot. As an entrepreneur, it really shifted things. And I actually was doing a launch during the first trimester. And we were at that point where I couldn't change the launch dates, didn't want to change the launch dates, felt like doing it and sticking to it. But it definitely threw the whole launch for a curveball, if you will. I was able to just show up and do the live components of the launch. So showing up and doing live streams, showing up and doing coaching calls and things like that. But I'm so grateful for my team, Paris and Sam in particular, who are my assistants, who were really able to take care of everything else in the business and during the launch so that I could just show up and do a live stream and go back to bed. And that was literally what I would do. I would sleep up until the live stream, do the live stream, go back to bed. So I'm really grateful we were able to do that and still have such a successful launch, but it was all due to having a team. I think launching during the first trimester with no team support would have been really hard. And in general, this whole thing made me so grateful to have the flexibility to work from home and on my own terms. I have so much respect for those who are pregnant who have to go into an office. Also, my lawn people are back, so hopefully it's not too loud. I have so much respect for those who have to go into an office and can't control their hours. I think that would be so difficult. And I know so many people do that on a regular basis. And I just really, really respect them. I also felt really frustrated with business in general because I just didn't feel like myself. And that was a frustrating emotion that I think carried into the work because I felt unreliable. And I think one of the things I'm most personally convicted about is that as a CEO running a team, you need to be a reliable team member as much as possible. And to be unreliable, to feel different minute to minute, hour to hour was really not only frustrating, but I felt guilty about that. I really judged myself for that. I wasn't very easy on myself for that, but I also couldn't really do anything about it. I couldn't change how I felt to become more reliable. And that was a really hard thing for me to feel. And really during the entire first trimester for business, I have only been showing up to the live things. So I've been showing up to live streams. You maybe even noticed the past couple of months that I have been more inconsistent with live streams. And that's just because I would plan on doing one and then be so nauseous that I just couldn't pull through and do it. So you've seen that maybe without realizing it. But I really have only shown up for the coaching calls, taking care of my clients, team meetings, and occasional live streams, and just slept when I wasn't doing those things and let myself take a break. But overall, I did in the first trimester find it really difficult to be consistent and continue to show up. And I think one big takeaway I had personally from running my business during the first trimester was how empathetic I am now to those who have chronic illness, because this sense of not being able to rely on how you feel, having your body feel things and being frustrated by that. I've personally never had chronic health issues. And I know this is such a real issue that so many people face that affects their business, that affects their life and how they do things. And so I really got a small taste of that. And it just made me respect and admire and have empathy for those who find a way to run a business with chronic health issues and work through that. And, it just really made me respect and admire those people even more than I already did, and made me realize how little I've had to go through that myself. Now, there are definitely some things I wish I'd done differently. So I'm going to share what I wish I had done differently and then things I'm glad I did the way I did. But some things I wish I had done differently was changing my work schedule immediately. As soon as I found out I was pregnant, changing my own expectations around my work hours. I really tried I let myself sleep, but I still had this expectation that I should be showing up a different way. And so there was guilt and frustration that I wasn't meeting that expectation, when I really should have just changed the expectation right away so that I could do the sleep and take the rest and have the flexibility without the guilt. And I think part of why I was hesitant to change things was because of our history. I think I just assumed something bad would happen. And so I think that's the mindset I was in at that time. So I wish I had changed my work schedule and expectations immediately. I also wish I had committed to less in the business once we found out. And really that way I wouldn't be flaking on things reactively, and I could be flexible without that guilt or self-judgment. So I would have kept the launch, but maybe I would have toned things down even more, or just decided to stop doing live streams for a couple of weeks instead of continuously saying I was going to, and then sometimes being able to and sometimes not being able to. And I also wish that I had understood that feeling unmotivated and feeling apathetic about everything, or just feeling not like myself, is okay, and didn't necessarily mean anything was wrong with me or my business or anything like that. I also wish that I had kept some kind of structure in the morning. Not that it needed to be a rigid morning routine by any means. But I'm the type of person that can really easily fall into a slump or a funk with no structure at all. And especially on those days where I was feeling really depressed and unmotivated and bad, sometimes when I have just no structure, that gets worsened by the floating around with no direction. So I think it would have been great to have some type of structure, like where I still aim to wake up at a certain time every day, and I still do a couple of things consistently in the morning to give myself that backbone. Instead, I just kind of floated along. And sometimes I think that really made me feel worse than I maybe would have felt if I had at least done a few things in the morning. I also wished I had stretched more regularly or walked more regularly. Now that I'm in the second trimester and starting to feel a little better, I'm noticing just how stiff I feel. I feel very like tight and stiff, and like now I'm stretching, but I wish I had just stretched regularly the whole time. So those are a few things I wish I had done differently. Some things that I'm really happy I did is I'm really happy I prioritized showing up for my clients and my team in the business, and letting everything else go. Even though there were issues with guilt around that or judgment, I'm really glad I had such clear priorities where I could just show up, do my coaching call, be fully present, be fully engaged, show up reliably and consistently in those top few ways. And then if the marketing needed to take a back seat, if I needed to skip an email, just letting that be okay during the season, I'm glad I did. I'm also glad I let myself sleep as much as I did. I gave myself permission to sleep anytime I needed it, anytime I was tired. And I really needed that. So I'm really glad I let myself do that. On another personal note, I'm also really glad I had a relaxed approach to what I was eating during the first trimester. Any other time I had been pregnant in the past, I was stressed out about eating perfectly. And actually it would create stress and anxiety. This time around, I just decided that if this baby could make it through the first 4 weeks of pregnancy while I was drinking a venti cold brew and wine and had no idea that this baby was just going to be resilient and it was just going to be different. So I just kind of took a more relaxed approach with it. And that was really helped by my OB-GYN. I got a new OB-GYN for this pregnancy. I had been unhappy with my past one, just because I kind of randomly picked someone when I first moved to Houston and never actually did any research. So this time I actually put in the effort to research and find an OB-GYN, and find one who really listened to me, who supported me, who saw me sooner than the others, who actually gave me her cell phone number, who actually got to see. In the past, I never even got to see the OB-GYN. I was just seeing the physician's assistant. So finding a new OB-GYN who was of the same mentality of me and the mentality I wanted to have was so helpful. She was very relaxed in her approach, never reckless or anything, but just helping me be more relaxed and casual and not worry about eating perfectly or very nutritiously while I was feeling so bad, and just eating and encouraging me to eat whatever I needed to have calories in. And like, it was around July 4th and she was like, eat a hot dog. Like, it's okay. You'll be fine. Whereas in the past I had been told like, absolutely not. So I know what you eat while you're pregnant everyone can have different opinions. But for me, it was just a nice shift to go from just trying to be this like perfect regimented pregnant person to just being a little bit more casual and relaxed. I think that really helped me overall be less stressed out for this pregnancy. I'm also really glad I told people early. We did not tell people we were pregnant the very first pregnancy. I have a whole podcast episode where I talk about that transition of why we decided to start telling people from that point forward. And And I'm so glad we followed through on that. I'm so glad we told people, even with the other miscarriages, our friends and family knew about them, which made those experiences so much more supportive. And then this time around as well, I felt like I had a great support system the entire time. And it was so thoughtful when friends would text me the morning of an appointment and check on me. Just the fact that they remembered, that they cared, that they asked meant a lot to me and really, really made me feel cared for and like I wasn't alone in this journey. I also told my team very early. So them knowing meant they could kind of check on me and care for me and give me that spaciousness and also celebrate when we got good news. So grateful we told everyone. We're just now telling social media, but all of our family and friends knew for a long time. So I'm really glad we did that. I also think it's really important. I'm glad I didn't compare my journey to anyone else's, specifically how I felt during the first trimester. My friends who've been pregnant, some of them have been like unicorn pregnant people who just glow and have no issues. And I love that for them, but I haven't felt that way. And so I really intentionally didn't judge myself for feeling the way I felt and feeling like I should be feeling anything differently. And I think Johnny has been a really huge help in that too, where I'll have like a meltdown. Like 2 weeks ago, I had a meltdown that I felt like I was sucking at everything in life. And he was like, "You're pregnant. It's okay." Like he kind of helped me through that. So I think, that decision to just not compare my pregnancy to anyone else's was critical. I also didn't stress about reading all the pregnancy books or doing a lot of learning or taking a lot of action or working on a to-do list during the first trimester and just letting myself focus on me and how I was feeling and taking care of myself. And also, I'm so glad that I bought maternity leggings and maternity biker shorts really early. I'm currently wearing maternity biker shorts. And even though I now have a little bump, I didn't when I bought them, but they're just so comfortable. So I'm very glad I did that. And then as we transition now into the second trimester, we're making some really big shifts behind the scenes to what my schedule is looking like, what's happening the rest of the year, maternity leave. So as we kind of wrap this up, I'm going to share a little bit about the changes in the transition we're making right now. So we are, and I say this all like I'm very in the moment, like a lot of this is still being experimented on. So this week, I decided to reset my morning schedule, my morning routine, just to give myself a little bit of extra structure. Not going to be like upset if I don't follow it every day or stress myself out about it. But on the days where I can and I feel good, I'm definitely going to try to follow this morning routine to help me feel better. So giving myself a 30-minute window to wake up. It's like 6 to 6:30, and then transitioning over to 30 minutes of some type of exercise. Again, it doesn't have to be every single day, but my loose plan is some Peloton cycling classes, some prenatal yoga videos that Peloton has or YouTube has, and then stretching. So on days where I don't want to work out, I'll at least do some type of stretch routine. So doing that in the morning, eating breakfast, getting ready, and like doing my mindset routine. Baking that into my structure in the morning is a really nice reset. It's still very simple. I'm giving myself tons of flexibility with it. But even just this week, it has made a huge impact on my mindset and my emotions and my energy compared to even last week. I know part of that is the second trimester, but I do think part of that is just helping me have some type of structure and not feel like I float along aimlessly. So resetting the morning schedule, I'm sure it'll change a lot between now and the end of pregnancy. I know it'll change a lot once we have a baby, but making that effort to update it and reincorporate it has been a big shift. I've also changed my work schedule. And again, this is all an experiment, but this is going to be 2 full days of work a week and 2 half days of work a week. I think eventually I'll probably try to get down to 2 to 3 full days and that's it. But for now, 2 half days and 2 full days feels really good. So Monday and Thursday are the half days where I have nothing to do work-wise the entire morning. So I get to do personal stuff. And then I just work in the afternoon, Mondays and Thursdays. And then Tuesdays and Wednesdays are my full work days. And then Friday, Saturday, Sunday, completely off, no work. So far, again, first week of testing this out, feeling really good. Feels really nice to have this, no expectations to jump in first thing Monday morning or be showing up at a different level than I feel like I can right now. So far, so good. I'll keep you updated as my schedule changes throughout the pregnancy. And we're also changing the plans for the rest of the year. Originally, I was going to do pretty big launches, promotions, master classes, 5-day live challenges, basically every other month for the next 6 months or so. And we're definitely toning that down. So between now and the end of the year, we'll probably do like 1 to 2 major promotions. We'll see. That's part of what I'm figuring out this week is exactly what I want the rest of the year to look like. But we are changing the plans for the rest of the year so that we can focus on the most important stuff, taking care of our clients and preparing for maternity leave. So assuming things continue to go well, the baby is due February 15th of next year of 2021. So there's a lot to do to plan for maternity leave. I've never had a maternity leave before, so I'm definitely messaging my friends about their maternity leave experience and advice so that I can have a good idea of what I want mine to look like. But there's a lot involved as a business owner in maternity leave. So I know everyone has their own idea of maternity leave. For me, I want the business to keep going. I want to keep making money and I want to keep supporting and serving our clients. I have no intention of my clients getting any less support when I'm on maternity leave. So this looks like hiring maybe a couple of new team members, really ramping up the training of the team members I have and new team members to make sure everyone feels really good before I leave for maternity leave, making sure my clients feel extremely supported before maternity leave and that way during maternity leave, and also having a really good transition plan for me as I come back to work. So I'll probably keep you updated once we have a maternity leave, and I'll probably share on a separate episode what that plan is. And then I think it'd be fun to do an episode after I've done it, sharing what actually worked and what didn't. I think that'll be really interesting and hopefully helpful for those of you who maybe want to plan a maternity leave in the future as well. So that's definitely something we're starting to really focus on right now as well, because even though it's only August, hiring team members and training them and getting things ready for that takes time. And I don't want to be in a rush by any means, especially with the holidays. And then overall, I have worked with moms, with parents for years, and I really have helped them in what I do. But I know I've never been a parent myself. So I've always known there's just this little, probably not little, but there's this difference in running a business as a parent. There's a different level of planning. There's different complications that pop up in having a weekly schedule. There's different challenges that accompany running a business while you're a parent. So even though I know those challenges may not be easy, I'm weirdly excited about seeing how this is going to change things for me and really take the business to the next level as well. Because I think that going through all of this is going to give me such a new perspective on time management, planning, mindset, running a business and scaling it, working with a team while you're a parent, prepping for maternity leave, all that good stuff. So I'm actually really excited to see what I learn through this journey, through the rest of pregnancy, through hopefully a successful pregnancy and birth and being a parent, and letting that take the business to the next level as well. Not that it's all about business by any means, but business and personal are super integrated, especially the way I teach things. So I know that this is actually going to really help me be able to make an even bigger impact. Whether you're a parent or not, I feel like it's going to help take what we do to the next level, which I'm really excited about. I'm really excited to bring that into the business space and to my clients as well. So there we go. This is kind of a long episode, but there was a lot I wanted to share about this. So this is, how the first trimester went, how pregnancy felt after miscarriage, and what's next. So I think it'd be really fun. Tell me if you're interested in this. If you're here live, you can leave me a comment, or if you're listening to this on the podcast or YouTube, you can let us know on social media. But I think it'd be kind of interesting to continue to do, maybe a second trimester and a third trimester update. I'm definitely not going to talk about this pregnancy all the time. More business content is coming. Don't worry. Mindset routines, all that stuff is coming. But I think that with what I teach, business and personal are integrated. And so I really like the idea of maybe giving a second trimester update and then a third trimester update. So maybe I'll have a couple personal one-off episodes like this where we can kind of catch up on a personal level. So if that sounds interesting, definitely let me know. That way I can make sure we plan around that. And you guys are open to that. So thank you so much for listening to this episode. Thank you for holding space for me. Ever since I first shared about our first miscarriage, I have been blown away by the community that has really come out of the podcast. People who share their stories with me. You are by no means obligated to, but if you do want to, please know I'm here. I understand, and I don't know what's going to happen. I can't predict the future. Hopefully this pregnancy is different for us, but you never know. But either way, just super appreciate the community that we have here and just letting me share all of this and holding space for me, both in the good news and the bad. So thank you so much for everyone who listens. Thank you for all the support you've shared with us throughout this entire journey. And hopefully we have a little baby girl around Valentine's Day next year. So again, thank you so much for listening. I will see you on the next podcast episode, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. Thank you for listening to the Productive Life podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, it would mean so much to me if you would share your biggest takeaway on your Instagram stories or wherever you hang out. This helps me understand what you find the most helpful so that I can make more episodes and resources like this. If this podcast has helped you at all, please take just 1 minute to leave a review on iTunes so that we can help spread the word about the Productive Life podcast with others who may enjoy it. And last but not least, don't forget to subscribe to the podcast to get the latest episodes sent to you directly. To learn how to work with me one-on-one or get instant access to freebies, trainings, templates, workshops, and more, be sure to go to meganmins.com right now. I'll see you in the next episode.